Oh, a new home sale. So, okay, we just started recording.
So
But
sorry
anyways,
about that. I
yeah.
apologize for starting earlier.
But what people are usually afraid of is some form of rejection, embarrassment, conflict, loss of status. But then you need to ask yourself, is that fear proportional to reality, to what's actually going on? Even though I've done these webinars a bunch of times, I'm always a little nervous before I do it, right? But what's the reality? The reality is once I get in front of you all, I actually really enjoy sharing these ideas and hearing from you. And that's actually more joy than fear. So we're not going to dismiss the risk, we're just going to calibrate it. So let's talk about this. What would 10% braver look like? If you want to put something in the chat for a situation, maybe you ask one clarifying question. Maybe you send the email instead of, obsessing over how it sounds for an hour beforehand. Maybe you apply for that role. Maybe you say, I just don't really just I don't agree with you. It's not conflict, it's just stating who you are. So, does anyone want to pop one into the chat real quick before we move on? Your version, 10% braver. All right, you can think about it. But really, all these small, courageous reps build something we call self-authority. And that's what makes the next thing easier, everything you do after that first 10%. So let's go there. So we're going to talk about self-authority. This is really the underlying concept, doing something without nerves. Thank you, Jennifer. So you may have seen this from my presentation on speaking up, women having the courage to speak. And it's not just women, right? But it is more common for women. It could be anyone. Maybe you're really shy. But really, this concept of self-authority is something that every single person on the planet struggles with at some point or another. And so this is the core belief. Courage doesn't come first. Self-authority does. Oh, thank you, Tara and Julie. Asking a question, scheduling a meeting, ask someone specific to be your case study. Yes, 10% braver then turns into a lot more percentage, higher percentage. So self-authority means you trust your internal judgment, even when the fear is present. It means you regulate fear instead of obeying it. And regulate it is literally pausing for a second when you feel that judge coming on or even hear it. I once had a client, I'll never forget this. I asked her to do a written exercise about what her inner judge looks like, sounds like how does she know the inner judge has showed up? And she wrote a fascinating little paragraph or two about how her inner judge was actually a bully, a real bully. She had, I don't know if it was middle school or high school, what that person wore, what they sounded like. I think maybe even the smell of their, if you remember this bubble yum, right? So it was really specific. But noticing the judge gives you this moment to stop and say, who am I going to listen to? And self-authority is going to work for you more often than that judge. So confidence is a feeling, self-authority is a decision. And when you decide to trust yourself even 10%, then you're going to get more courage. So if self-authority is internal, what makes it harder in the real world? Probably heard me talk about this too. If you've, or maybe you've just noticed this concept showing up. You may not even know there's a word for it. This concept called the double bind. It's actually really well studied in social sciences. There's a great book from Alison Fergal, who's quoted here, called Likeable Badass, which is listed at the end. But this is a very real structural tension that many professionals, especially women and minorities, navigate. I mean, this has been going on since we were Neanderthals, and one community would meet another one, and we're assessing each other. Are you competent? Are you warmth? And they're evaluated to warm. Are you evaluated together? Yes, thanks, Nicole. But really, competence is the assertiveness, capability, and confidence. And on the other side, are you warm? Are you likable? Are you easy to approach? But the challenge is not being assertive on its own. It's the perception of warmth. So, and you can see in this quote, right? She puts it, women or minorities aren't penalized for being assertive. They're really judged harshly for the absence of warmth. What's interesting in the studies, this is probably the topic of a whole different day, but men tend to be um, judged quite positively showing one or the other. But for women and minorities, you kind of have to show both. It's not fair. Didn't say I liked it. But this is a reality that can get in the way of us showing this courage, this 10% more, less fearful and speaking up to get what we want in this world. So you're not imagining it if you feel some of these fears. So how do you speak in a way that holds both confidence and warmth? I want to give you some examples. So there's a lot of ways that you can just rephrase something that maybe you were going to say anyway. There's a part of me that hesitates sometimes to share these tips because I don't want to come across as, oh, you have to change yourself. But we also live in a world with millions and millions of other people. And if you want to have an easier time, sometimes we do this. So Jenny says number two is seen as woke. Or I guess it's a question. I don't know which one you mean by woke. Is it one of the second columns? You can chat or speak up if you like. Being caring. Okay. Is number two seen as being woke these days? What do you think? Is it more important to show up in a way that
Mm.
helps you maneuver in this world? Being caring? Yeah, I mean, I personally choose to be caring. I don't know quite how to answer this. I'm going to be very honest. It is a very politicized world. I err on the side of being authentic as much as possible, and I'm not in political office, so maybe I have that freedom. Does anyone else want to speak to this? I love the question, Jenny.
Could I just say it's
Yeah.
because I am political. I'm a former mayor and
Ah,
I lost in 2024 against the forces that aren't as caring. So
Okay.
I fought that, and I fought this whole thing
yeah,
about it is political, and I don't want to be political here, but that number two on the slide before here indicated, that those are good things to be, but in these days and age, it's looked
that's
at
one.
as being weak or being
Yeah.
compromising.
Okay. That is a really good point, and I'm glad you brought that up. And so what I'm hoping, I think the best answer to give it some of the attention this really deserves is giving people some experiments. So much of what I do is about helping people experiment in their lives to get a different result. Not saying these will positively work for any of you, but I'm hoping that the examples on the right side of the screen help you show up in a strong way, but also in a way that lets people at least hear what you're trying to say versus, I'm not saying any of you would do this, but emotions can run high at work and elsewhere. And if you just be like, God, that's so stupid, or I don't agree, right? As particularly as a woman, you're going to be penalized more, and hopefully as a man too. I don't know, I'm not one. But I would try some of these experiments to see how you might be received. To see, and you're probably going to want to come up with some of your own. Hope that's helpful. But especially the things on the left are often these hedging, apologizing, minimizing. It's mostly women who do this. I can't tell you the number of times I've been in a meeting and someone will say, can I ask a clarifying question? I've done it myself. That person is almost always a woman. What if you were just say, hey, I have a question. Do you have a minute? I'd like to just clear something up. So these are things you can just play with and see, right? You're asking politely. There still is that warmth, but where are you over protecting yourself? And where can some clarity replace that? And also your tone will signal warmth as well. So it's not just what you say, but you can really shift how you're perceived and want to be perceived with a combination of warmth and some specific phrasing. I have my husband and I have occasionally go to this really great marital therapist. We call her adult supervision. And she tells us something funny sometimes. She tells us, Nicole, like that one. She tells us, mind the tone and ignore the tone, which is obviously a contradiction in some ways, but it may be more valid or more applicable in its very close kind of relationship like a marriage. But, watch how you're saying something to people. And if someone you love says something to you in a tone you don't love, try to figure out what they're really saying before overreacting. So, yeah, the recording will be shared later. We kind of got started a little bit late with the recording, but certainly everything I'm talking about now will be. So, um, yes, I like that, Barbara. I'd like to offer a different perspective. Yes, that's a great one. The trick is, as in many things in life, is remembering what you want to say, maybe in a tense or stressful moment. So that's why it's called a practice. All right, so let's go on to the next, just a couple things, and then the last framework, and then we'll get into your questions. So shoulds. Any of these look familiar to anybody? Most of these are, probably internalized messages. Maybe they're showing up in your own internal saboteur voices, like we looked at in the beginning. But so many, I mean, this list used to be much longer in my original presentation, but we didn't have enough time to go through all of them. But watch out for these things that you're saying shoulds. Yeah, all the above, Stacy, right? So a lot of them come from culture, from your family, from media, from well-meaning advice. As adults, we get to decide if we agree with these or not. But first, you have to become aware that they're even existing. So they often even sound like motivation, but they're often fear, right? Scarcity talking, safety talking, self-protection talking. Now, in this day and age, in 2026, with the job market and just there could not be more uncertainty in our world right now. I am not standing here saying you should ignore every single thing and quit your job if you have nothing else, right? Use some common sense here. But given your own circumstances, have the freedom in your own mind to at least question some of these assumptions, right? I don't know. I've run into plenty of people whose parents are lawyers or doctors, and that's a very obvious example of, oh, well, I'm going to be a lawyer and a doctor also. And it's not everyone is as clear cut. When you have hippie parents, they're like, do what you want. That's its own kind of pressure. But so just kind of think about whose voice are you listening to when some of these thoughts pop up. So see if I think these are pretty clear here, but a good common refrain to say to your own Miranda Priestley or judge is says who, right? That's kind of a helpful thing here. So let's move on to what helps with that even more. The power of giving yourself permission. This was also another topic of a previous webinar through the Tufts alumni. So it's not just a mindset shift, it's really an act of self-leadership, like I mentioned at the very beginning, right? Being a leader is about really leading yourself and your own mindset and where you're deciding what's true for you. So, and this, I have this particular quote here. Her book is called Taking Back Your Brain. It's at the end and the resources too. But this is where I first heard about this concept of giving myself permission. She has an incredible podcast series. But what can you give yourself permission to? It interrupts the shoulds. You interrupt the judge. And it's not a passive thing, it's very active. You can use it in the moment. Maybe like I will tell you, I'm constantly telling myself, you're not going to the gym, you're not exercising enough. I mean, like technically that fact is true, but the way I say it to myself and the tone and making myself feel bad. What if I gave myself permission to be like, I'm really exhausted today. I will walk around the house for 5 minutes, right? You're not giving up on yourself. You are giving yourself permission to do what you can actually handle in that moment. Or why am I not further along in my career? Well, stop and ask yourself. I'll tell you, so many peers of mine are heads of things. I realized, but wasn't fully aware of it earlier in my career. I don't want to go higher and higher in organization and sit in more and more meetings and talk about things that I don't always agree with. So I don't think that was a fully conscious choice in the moment, but now it is. I'm giving myself permission to realize that what I value in my life, how I want to live my life, is different than that. So, and there's nothing wrong with either choice. So let's one more slide, then we'll get to your question. So permission is really the antidote to the shoulds. It's self-authority in action. So you get to decide really consciously about what you want to do. I think I've kind of verbally said all these things here, but everything we're talking about here is being conscious about how you want to live your life and what's important to you and sticking up for yourself and self-advocacy. So when you give yourself permission, you stop rejecting your own judgment, and that's where real confidence begins. And that's where courage becomes sustainable. So I'll do one more prompt in the chat here, and then we can move on to your questions. If you replaced one should with a permission, what would change in your life? I'll take a sip of my favorite mango seltzer while you guys think about that. See a few people typing. Ah, Jennifer, love to hear more if you want to. I do hear that a lot, though. And maybe I told you that a little question you can ask yourself a few minutes ago says who? I'd like to add another one in there, which is why not? How can you answer that for yourself, right? Explore different career. Same Anna and Stacy and Jennifer are all saying some of the similar things, right? And I'd like to also point out that what you thought was a great path for you at 21, 22, 25, maybe even 30, there's really good reasons why things may not feel as rewarding, X number of years later, 5, 10, 15, right? We're all just kind of shifting and we forget to go back and check in with ourselves. So, all right. Who has some questions on this? So what we mean by this is if you have a really specific situational question that you'd like me to try to help you out with, or this in coaching school, we call this the hot seat, but it doesn't have to be hot. You can even ask just over chat. But if there's a situation you'd like a little bit of help with, this is your time.
And Becky, I suppose if they want to, we've got someone raising their hand.
Go for it.
I'm muting too, so I think
Go
we've
ahead,
got two
Jess.
people.
Yeah.
So,
Hello. Hello. I'm going to do my best to try and get this question out. So, I've been really fascinated by this concept of the inner critic recently. And the way I see it, I feel as if there's almost two tiers of the inner critic. There are those you're existing essentially in some form of assimilation with your environment where you're just dealing with that general inner critic that's you're not good enough. That would be the main one, right? That comes to
Yeah.
mind, or the ones that you sort of had on the screen earlier. And then there's the inner critic that can come when you compound that. So that would be sort of this tier one inner critic too. The way I see it, there's also this tier two inner critic, where if you're actually not assimilating with your environment, you're opposing your environment, there's that second level inner critic that can come along. So the sort of internal negotiations you can go through that says, hey, this may be a really unpopular opinion to everyone else that I'm projecting this too, and it makes me want to be more silent because it's less of this, you know, societal focus on mental health, all of that, and you are good enough versus actually combating your environment when everyone sort of believes that and says, okay, how do I handle this version of the inner critic?
Yeah. Yeah. That's pretty interesting. And it's extra stressful. I kind of want to acknowledge that. Is there a specific situation you wanted to share?
Oh, I will keep the contextual details to myself right
Okay.
now. Though it is because I've gone through the you're not good enough and
Yeah.
you need to change. Though also I have found that um there could be aspects of my environment that are social fads or all this that I don't and I see injustice within those and I want to call them out and there's still the inner critic that says, well,
Yeah.
this, different tiers.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. So
So I guess okay, I guess perhaps the word is reassurance that I'm looking for is that even if it is once you overcome that once I feel to have overcome that first tier inner critic, I can push myself to that next level of courage that is, and I'm also allowed to oppose my environment without criticizing myself on that front as well.
I think everybody here, including me, would say yes.
Yes.
I would also say that going back to the small experiments, another thing I say a lot is small, safe experiments. So I know a lot of people who are attracted to a school like Tufts really do have strong motivations around justice, right? Not everybody, but what would feel good for you to stand up for in a small way that would build your courage? And that would be something I would ask you if we're really in a coaching session.
Sure.
Yeah. Is there something that comes to mind you want to throw out?
Oh, I
Yeah.
just gender equality generally.
Yeah. Okay.
A double standard. I look at
Yeah.
with an intensive light. So I've recently been experiencing the internal repercussions of uh, having an absence of warmth and not feeling guilty for it.
Yeah.
It actually feels really powerful moving past that because I'm able to, and I think a very difficult point specifically for women is when that sense of empathy starts to rise up that says, well, you're not considering this might be getting
Yeah.
too deep into the context now, though. I want to make sure everyone has time
Yeah.
to speak, though, that you have to what about that empathy that women have suffered over time can keep them held back from being able to embrace that sort of enmeshment that can come along. That's I'm not going to stand up and feel this absence of warmth because I could be offending other women
Right.
rather than
Yes.
having stepping forward and saying, follow me, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. It is a dance. I really appreciate you speaking up about this. And as you already noted, we're not going to solve that in the time we have here. But what I want to point out that I heard you say is deciding for yourself. Even though I shared the double bind dynamic, doesn't mean you have to follow it all,
Sure.
right? You can decide for yourself in every moment, right? What's more important to you.
Yes.
So, yeah, thank you, Stacy. I appreciate that.
Thanks.
Looks like, thanks, Nicole. Jennifer.
Hi, Becky. I have
Hi.
a question that I'm in an active job search. A
Mhm.
year ago, I wasn't. And I was talking with someone in my network, and she was telling me she was accepting a new job. And her new job, what she was excited about, but it was less compensation than previous. And she's a really talented person, really accomplished. It took her a long time to get a job, and she accepted something less. And I thought to myself, my inner critic of her was thinking, like, wow, don't you value yourself? Why did you do that?
Mhm.
Now, fast forward, I'm in a job search. I'm looking at an opportunity and it's early stages. There's a lot I don't know about it, but it looks really cool, really cool. But the
Right.
level, the compensation is lower than I've been making in the past. And my inner critic is looking at it and saying, why would you even look at this? What is that saying
Yeah.
about you and your confidence in yourself and what you're worth in the marketplace? So I just wonder if you could comment on that. I'm guessing that is a common phenomena
It
in this
is.
market.
It's absolutely common. Thank you for sharing. Um, I'm a really realistic kind of person. At the same time, I really believe in asking yourself what's in it for you. So let me say that in another way, which is there's all sorts of things that we want to get out of our work, right? Pay, obvious. Um, Self-expression, learning, growth, these are all extremely common life values that we're looking for. But you don't have to have all of them met to the same length. Sorry, extent. I really should have had more coffee. Sorry. A different job in a different time in your life can fulfill different needs. And I would be asking yourself, what specific needs are the most important right now and in what order? So I'm just going to make a guess that having an income is pretty up there, Jennifer.
Mhm.
But what else, right? You said it sounded pretty cool.
Yeah, the job is really
So I think,
interesting.
yeah. So it may not be the end all be all in your life. And there's also a concept that I really like a lot. This may or may not apply to you here, but I want to share it. A concept of a recovery job. I happen to work with a lot of folks who had some like really bad experiences like PTSD, things from previous jobs, and when they, including myself in the past. And when I think about going into their next job, there's a lot of fear. I'm not saying that's true for you here, Jennifer, but I ask those people the same question I'm asking you is, what do you most need to get out of this job? Maybe it's a shorter commute, along with the income. We're going to say that as a given.
Hmm.
Maybe it's a particularly interesting person or leader you want to work with. Maybe it's something that you wouldn't have learned elsewhere that can set you up for your next job or help you write a book. So the more clear you are on what's in it for your intrinsic interests and values versus what the judge doesn't know it all, right? The judge is probably going to be saying things to you based on external validation more than internal drive. And that's what I want to say.
Okay, thank you. That's really
You're
helpful.
welcome. Great. Tara. Hi, Tara.
Thank you for everything you're saying. So I am leaving behind a career that I've had for my entire adult life. By all accounts, I'm very good at it. Most accounts, I'm very good at it. And I'm starting a business. I have a lot of fear keeping me from doing the things I think I quote unquote should be doing to get it off the ground. The main fear I want to ask you about today is, which actually really crystallized as I was listening to you. Um, I attend a lot of seminars from entrepreneurs, business classes, and everyone says, you have to be willing to fail, you have to learn to adjust and pivot as you go. You're going to put things out there, and then you're going to learn that they should be, you need to tweak them. And I'm like, what does failure mean? I mean, does that mean I'm going to lose my house? Do I have to be willing to vacate all of my savings? Yeah, I'll leave it there. If that's not relevant enough to what you're talking about, I'll pull out a couple questions that definitely
Okay.
are.
What, so going back to the very first person who spoke, she ended up saying what I'm kind of looking for is some sort of reassurance or something. Is that what you're looking for here too?
What am I looking for?
Yeah. What would feel good to hear?
I guess always reassurance.
Yeah.
I guess we could start there. Sure.
Okay. Okay. And it's okay, people here, if you don't have should I do this or this, which I wouldn't answer anyway, by the way. But if I would give you an atmospheric answer, how's that, Tara? Because also this one's very near and dear to my heart because I run my own business. And for anyone who's thinking about doing this, like Tara or anybody else, there is a shit ton of stuff out there about how things should go or myths or, oh boy, if you're an entrepreneur, you better work 60 hours a week. I do not, 30, 35 maybe. Do I have because for me, and this may be true for you too, it's far more important for me to have a balanced life. And that goes back into your own values. For anyone here, any of the shoulds that are going on, if you start and thinking about, well, actually, what's more important for me versus all the shoulds that somebody else is saying, that can provide some clarity. And I don't know what your business is, Tara, but said you were worried about losing your house. But make that more specific. When you hear these people saying these entrepreneurial experts, first of all, most of them are just making money off you, not running their own business. That's what I've learned too. So where does that particular fear come from? The one about losing your house?
Well, I'm going to say this. I don't think it answers your question, but just as a way to get me thinking. I just wonder, how far am I going to fall? How far do I need to expect or be willing to fall? So where does that come from? Survival. The fact that I've spent all this time since leaving Tufts, I think 35 years ago now, building. I have a life that's secure. I can eat. I have what I need. And am I going to give that all up and end up on the street?
Okay.
Answer.
Here's what I like to say to that. Number one, I battle with this all day long myself too. But here's what my top value right now, well, it's always transparency. So this is why you hear me telling you like it is. But secondarily, it's independence, autonomy right now, which is just barely edging out my security, stability thing. Also, the scarcity, some money, all that, we all have that to a certain extent. I already mentioned I was raised by hippies. They got no money. So, that's always something I've struggled with too. But then you have to remember you've been taking care of yourself just fine all these years. And you can also battle those concerns with the other part of your brain, right? So if you did attend my positive intelligence webinar, you may or may not remember that all the worries come from a part of your brain called the amygdala. It's where all the things you were worried about or scared about that you don't even remember experiencing live. If you can shift that to the more reasonable part of your brain, The prefrontal cortex, that's where all your practical stuff lives. So Tara, if you were to sit down and say, how much money do I have? How much money am I willing to invest in this time frame? What do I need? What do I really need to survive on? Like start enlisting that adult part of your brain. And then the second thing I want to throw out there is you can do this with a friend, a partner, with me if you want to. What would it look like if the worst thing happened? How would you survive that? What would you do first, second, third? Right? So that question really highlights the kind of resources you really do have. So been there, have the t-shirt. So who's next? I hope that helped. Who's after
Hi.
Andrea
Tara?
next.
Hello.
Andrea's next.
Great. Hi, Andrea.
Hi. Well, first of all, thank you. It's great to meet you. I have been looking forward to this session for many weeks now, as Nicole knows. And I am 10 years into my career, and both of the industries that I have worked in, higher ed and production, are in distress. And I've had two layoffs in the past 4 years.
Oh,
And so I'm currently needing to pivot, and I'm also recovering from the PTSD of previous jobs. And while I have a general idea of what industry I want to pivot into, more biotech, life sciences, healthcare, my scarcity mindset and sort of trauma from previous experiences are limiting me. I'm having a really hard time quieting the previous voices of bosses or people besides my own. And I have found within the last, 7 months of job hunting, a lot of rejections basically saying, well, you don't align closely enough, or when you're trying to pivot into another industry, you're not one to one, and a lot of places are not wanting to take the risk on that. And so, I'm having a hard time managing that feedback and not feeling combined with the scarcity mindset and all of these things that like the insecurity just gets driven up and the confidence goes down.
yeah.
So any advice on trying to stay true to yourself and maybe not letting all of the outside voices or previous experiences completely um, kind of debilitate your ability to move.
Thank you for sharing that. And a little vulnerability in there, and I really appreciate that, Andrea. So I promise I'll give you some feedback, but I want to start here. If you were me and I just shared that story, what would you tell me?
I would be a lot nicer to you than I am of myself.
Okay. And what would that
Oh,
look like?
I don't know. I mean, um, well, I'm a big fan of nonviolent communication. If anyone's ever read that book and knows about that kind of modality, by Marshall D. Rosenberg. And so they have things called empathy sessions. So this
Yeah.
is where you kind of put yourself in the shoes of the other person. I mean, I think I would say there are a lot of uncertainties out there, and I'm sensing that you're feeling vulnerable and stressed and um scared and rejected and a lot of different feelings which basically come from the basic human universal need of being respected, being
Mhm.
safe in the workplace, being able to grow, being able to learn and make mistakes, and also not having control over everything. So I would say, especially to having been laid off twice in the past 4 years, like it is a really tough spot to be in. Friends and stuff just kind of are like, yeah, we'll keep our ears out for you, but it really makes you question kind of everything, especially when, you aren't in control of the industries that you picked, and I don't think they were mistakes at the time. I think I was learning. Um, but I don't know what to advise you. I can give you
Okay,
permission to
that's
feel your
fair.
feelings, Becky, but I don't know what to tell you.
Thank you, Andrea. You know what? And now that you've given me permission to feel my feelings, and I hope you've given yourself permission, I'm happy to kind of switch to the mentor stance for a second and give you some advice. Does that work?
Love it.
Okay. And I do hope you do a little, I don't know, celebration, awareness, acknowledgement of treating yourself well now that you've just so eloquently said all those things that I think many people here are probably feeling. So a couple things. So I'm just going to get to the practicalities here for having changed industries myself is um, try to really clearly identify, if you haven't already, a plan A, B, and C, and be working on those multiple plans, or plan A, at least more than one, right? And like I told, I think it was Jennifer earlier, like what's in it for you for the next thing, for your next, what will you accept and what will you get out of it for any of these plans? Like we already know the income's a given, right? So that you're kind of giving yourself more choices, and the more clearly you're articulating these plans to yourself, the more clearly you can articulate them to other people for networking. I happen to have a real love, and I like to say a gift for networking. I have some great tools at my disposal, and just particularly for folks who might feel introverted or don't know where to start, all that kind of thing. Maybe that's another webinar, Nicole. So there's ways the job market sucks and all the things we're taught to do and apply. And oh my God, 100 people have already applied to this on LinkedIn. Ignore that, by the way. But I would, if I was looking for a job right now, I would be hitting the network slopes really hard. But I would be, and maybe even getting my own coach for that because it's so easy to feel rejected. But there's ways to do that in a more strategic way versus who do I know at this company? And when you're changing industries, being able to really practice and articulate why you are a good fit, regardless of whether you've exactly done it before or not. And you're going to have to run into somebody, there's an element of luck, someone who just really likes you and feels like you will be that fit because of what you're already bringing, even if it's not a perfect match. So I hope that's helpful. I hope you come talk to me after too.
Yes. Oh, I definitely will. I'll see you soon.
Awesome. All
Thank
right.
you.
And actually, while we're doing, I've got 8 slots already predefined here available at that QR code. I'm going to keep answering questions. And then if you don't find one, I am going on vacation next week. I am one of those people that had to reschedule from Puerto Vallarta, by the way, from all the cartels.
Oh,
But anyways, back to the next person. I've forgotten who's
okay,
next.
well, Stacy was going to be next, but she had to jump off. So I think
Okay.
we are at Ginny and then
Yeah.
Sheila and then Jane. So
Great.
we've got
And I
3
can
more.
stay a few minutes later. I do have to, I go be somewhere at 15 after the hour, but I'm
Okay.
willing to stay a little
So
bit
I,
longer.
so I think I'm asking Ginny's question. Hold on a second here.
Okay.
I can just tell you that,
Oh, okay.
first of all, I feel like I'm in a different situation from everybody
Yeah.
because I just turned 70 and I'm kind of not in that
Yeah.
job mode.
Yeah.
I was elected here for many, many years. My question has to do with OCD because a lot of some of the things that you're mentioning, and OCD, obviously, a lot of people think you have to line everything up on a table, but I'm recently learning a lot more about it because of
Okay.
some family and some friends, and realizing that I think a lot of people might have that, and it looks like some of the things you're talking about. So I was wondering if you could sort of expand on that.
I will say I'm not a therapist. I will say, so yes and no. Um, so I think I saw your note earlier, and I think you're saying some of these inner saboteurs, inner critics kind of getting way out of hand. Is that what we're talking about?
Yeah, I think, and it's a lot of young people, and they
Yeah.
have all of these things that are telling them that they're terrible people, and sometimes it causes them even to harm themselves. And I know you don't want to go there, but some of that doubt and the judge, like when you talk about the judge, it's like that's literally what I think they live with every day. And I think a lot of people, they may not have it in such a way that's so just interfering with their lives. But I think that there's a lot of it in a lot of us, especially if you think that we've been trying to accomplish a lot for our lives, moms, grandmoms, jobs, education, everything.
I've noticed some of that myself too, Ginny. I actually have a young client right now, younger, well, 30 years younger than me. And I'm going to give you an example. I don't know the answer. I gonna play with it for a minute with you. But it's interesting to me that this particular client, without revealing anything confidential, has told me she really struggles with making decisions herself and not knowing what to do. And she had shared a story from her childhood and like from a very young age, sharing some examples with me. And it is a struggle. And I think I'm going to kind of fall back on some things I told Tara about the fears around scarcity starting your own business. This might seem like a weird connection. I'm going to give it a go, which is the more you can practice with people who've grown up with or ended up with a mindset of like not feeling any self-authority, is kind of, or maybe the opposite of what we're talking about here, Jenny, is maybe 25% reassurance and 75% asking them to practice what they do know and recall what they do know. And then maybe if that's not working, we get into some therapy territory that I'm not. But as a coach, I do feel like the more I can kind of call out, you do know this. You just sent me a list of that. Like let's remember what you actually have learned about yourself in this period of time. I don't know if that'll work all the way, Jenny. It's a
But that,
generational thing that I'm not part of.
I'm sorry. One thing that you said that is like literally is follow out what's the worst that could happen, because
Yeah.
that is what they ruminate about.
Yes.
They, me, everybody
Every-
ruminates about, and so you really nailed that, exactly what they're told to try to get through some of this stuff.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah. I mean, I personally had I had a pretty chaotic childhood, no surprise. It was very interesting with the hippies, but I had a therapist tell me about 3 or 4 years ago, and I've never forgotten it. She's like, you've already been proven to yourself, you've been taking care of yourself all this time. I was like, oh yeah, like that. I mean, that seems like so obvious to tell someone, but I guess I need to hear it. And, I have experimented with that with some of my clients too. So yeah, thank you for
Thank you
asking.
very much.
Yeah,
Thank
you're
you.
welcome. Who's next?
I'm scrolling. Let's see.
Okay.
Sheila and then Jane.
Okay. Great. Lay it on me.
Sheila, are you still there? Still out there?
Sheila,
Um,
let me see if she may not
let's
be.
see.
Let me-
Sheila?
I don't. Oh yeah, I see Sheila still in the meeting.
Oh,
I
it
don't
says
know if she can hear us.
but
Sheila.
her
Oh.
mic isn't working.
Oh.
So
Okay.
let's see. She's putting the
Oh yeah. Yeah.
question
Let's
in
put it
the,
in the chat. Okay.
okay. Let
Great.
me
Let me
see. I think
scroll
she had already,
down. Okay.
okay, let me find it.
Yeah. Happy to answer in the chat.
Okay. Let's see
Sorry
here.
about that spreadsheet, you guys. I thought I tested it on my phone
Okay.
yesterday. Okay.
Okay, Sheila writes, I've been in the same industry since 1984,
Oh, yeah.
currently freelancing, but work is light. Wondering if I tough it out and hope work comes, I do actively pursue opportunities, or do I try to pivot to something else? Rather daunting and overwhelming at my age, especially because I have no clue what that pivot would entail.
Okay. So what's Sheila? Can you write? So that is a very valid and large topic of inquiry. Inquiry is a coaching word for a big question that's too hard to answer in the moment. So, but what's maybe a subset of that we could tackle right now? And that's something I ask people in coaching too, right? In the time we have available, what chunk of that would you like to address? Happy to give it a go. Okay. Do you want to type that in? And then while you do that, Barbara let me know directly that she is trying to look up Andrea Horner and wasn't sure which one is her profile. So Andrea, if you can connect with Barbara Eden.
I just did. I just found you.
Okay,
I
great.
think I found you.
All right. And Sheila. Okay, back to Sheila. I guess if I just continue on a path or come up with something new. Okay. All right. And because you said so is the work that you do in an area that the world has kind of just shifted? Are we talking about AI, for example? You keep going in the chat if that's easy. I'm happy to. Okay. AI is definitely impacting. Okay. So I would ask you first then, if this was like a real coaching session, how much does what you're currently doing still fulfill your specific life values, right? Autonomy, freedom, um, learning, purpose, any of those things. And if you still feel like it's a pretty good fit, then I would go into, okay, so I'm going to just make up a story right now that you're a copywriter. I don't know if that's true or not. So, and if that's true, then I would be asking you some questions about, all right, we know about AI. It does impact. I would have you do a little research and maybe look for, I happen to know a couple copywriters and do really more, what is what you're feeling about your diminished work, customers, clients. Is it, let's find out what the root cause is. Is it the industries that you're looking for clients in? Is it something else? And maybe do that with some research with some other colleagues. That would be where I would start. And if the answer to my previous question is about, no, this doesn't really do it for me anymore, then I would have you go down, use this framework that I have. Yeah, Susan was asking me about the QR code. I'll come back to that in just a second. So the framework that I have to help people what they want next is going back to those small, safe experiments, but also collecting some data on yourself about what are the things that really you enjoy the most that put you in a flow state. A few of us take an inventory, we kind of take it for granted. And then it's kind of a whole longer process. It's based on something called design thinking, but it's all about collecting information, doing brainstorming on what possible new combinations of your values and what you like to do are. That's something really great to do with a coach. And then I have people pick three possible next paths and really explore those. And if you aren't sure what those next paths are, here's some defaults I ask people to consider. You know, what would your life look like over the next 3 to 5 years if you kept going with what you're doing? And this is kind of a drawing exercise, and I can show you later. And not just your work, your life, your family, your fitness, your health. What would it look like if that job went away today and it wasn't a choice anymore? And maybe a third option is, what is that wild and crazy idea you've always wanted to do? For me, it would be opening a clothing store. And the point isn't to decide immediately, it's to sketch out what your life might look like. We don't do this. We just think, I mean, you may or may not have heard my story of taking 5 years to decide to go to grad school and feeling very stuck for that period of time, right? I didn't actually try on some of these ideas about what would my life really look like if I did go to grad school. So I'm going to pause here and let Sheila respond if she gets a chance, because that was a lot. And by the way, Nicole, Susan Hart also needs some help with the
Yes, I am
schedule. Got it.
I'm
Okay.
keeping track of
Great.
everyone here.
Yep. Yeah, that was a lot, Sheila, I know, but that's what we call those inquiries. But if you'd like to talk more in the next step, I'd be happy to. And even though there's 8 slots on that sign up, I'm certainly willing to have more. Oh, the curious
So we
side,
did have a,
yeah. Go ahead, Erica, and look at that. The QR code, apparently it's not working for people to sign up, but that's what we're talking about. So that I'm offering everybody who's interested a free 45-minute coaching session where we can tackle kind of a small subset of what you're dealing with. And then if you would like to talk about working together with me on a more formal basis, we can talk about that too. And while people are working on that, who's next? We could probably
we had Jane next.
Okay,
Had
let's
Jane.
squeeze in another one.
Jane's
There's the
still there.
resources. Yep.
Hi. Hi. There we go. It works, right?
Hi, Jane.
Hi. Um, I started a new job last year and it's really like it's it's exactly kind of where what I wanted to do, and the path that it's on is like the person that's sort of leading the team is, on her retirement path, and then I'm like the next in line, right? So I'm, succession, right? And uh I guess I just still, I don't know, I don't know why I struggle, but I do with certainly like still the whole like imposter syndrome
Mm,
concept. And just like just like sending it's not like I'm paralyzed, but like, it's like I'm just, responding to a technical question in email and I'm like, okay, I have to get this right, like just or like is
Yeah.
or like if I'm working with other people, like we have these kind of like industry groups and I like interact with other people that do kind of the same thing, but like we're all different places and that sort of stuff. And I'm always like, am I like am I doing what I'm like, am I good at this? So, it's like weird. I don't, and I have like an advanced degree and certifications and all that jazz. And
Yeah.
so, but it's just, I'm like, is this like why? So,
Okay.
I don't know if that's enough to go by, but that's kind of where
That's
I am.
fine. So, what would you most like to be different?
I don't know. I guess I just when I'm when I'm thinking about stuff, like I have somebody told me this like a million years ago, like my first job, well, second job, but she was always like trust but verify. So like I guess I have a little trouble like trusting my instincts, where
Hmm.
I'm like, oh, I think I know what I'm talking about, but like I always have to check it, which like isn't a bad thing, but just I feel like I don't know, it's like is it I don't know if I don't want to be wrong. So like I feel like I
Yeah.
should check things, but um it's just kind of I have to struggle with like balancing my instincts with like making sure everything is right. So it's sort
Yeah.
of,
Okay.
you know, I think
So
that's
this
where it
is
comes.
I'm really glad you asked this because and we're not going to be able to,
Right.
solve this for you. But I'm glad because every single person on the planet goes through imposter syndrome or what we call imposter syndrome in some way or shape. I mean, women talk about it more. I know men do too, but I think it becomes more associated with women because maybe we talk about it more. But in that book I mentioned in the resources by Alison Fergal, she has a definition of imposter syndrome that really stuck with me. And I don't know if this is true for you, but I want to offer it, which is that maybe imposter syndrome is when we ourselves set such high standards for ourselves. And I think I'm picking that up from you a little bit. And then we don't think we can reach those. And those expectations are seem to be from some of us in line with the shoulds, or I must not. I must not make a mistake. I should be perfect. I should, right? So that goes back to a lot of what you're telling yourself, right? The inner thoughts, the inner critics, and there's absolutely things that you can do to minimize that and mitigate it. And if you don't want to wait to talk to me or want a resource right away, look for the book Positive Intelligence on Amazon. I use a lot of that in my coaching. So you can see on the slide, there's an assessment that will tell you, along with the judge, what your other 9 accomplice saboteurs are. So I'm going to guess that maybe one of yours could be, it's called stickler, which has to do with being a perfectionist. There's nothing that doesn't mean anything bad about you. It means that at some point in your early life, you learn that as a coping mechanism for feeling safe in your life, which you basically just described. And now it's in your way. So what do we do about it? So, Ilona, how do any of those things land?
Yeah, no, that sounds good. I mean, I think I suppose I need to think about it a bit
Yeah.
more. Um, but and like I don't I think, yeah, I mean, I don't think I necessarily lack confidence. It's just sort of like I get a little, like, I just sort of, like, I don't, it's like I am confident, but like, do other people see it that way? So,
Okay.
like that kind of thing.
So then I would be asking you some questions. I'll throw some out now. I'm so sorry it's at the end. But, going back to that 10%, right? So how do you want to feel in yourself? You don't have to share it with anybody else. The next time you email or communicate to somebody that's so I'm assuming from what you're telling me that some of the feelings that come up don't feel that great. So I'm asking you to say what would feel better and
Okay.
practice some thoughts that would result in that. If you're looking at that book by Carl Lowenthal, there's some fascinating exercises in there called the thought ladder. And there's this concept of like, we all know about affirmations, right? Oh, I'm gonna be 10 pounds thinner by May 1st, all that stuff, right? Or I will be confident in this meeting. What a lot of times those don't work very well for us because we don't actually believe it yet. So you need to start with some thoughts to tell yourself that you do believe and build up for it. So that goes along with maybe how you want to feel because what you're saying to yourself impacts how you feel. So if you want, I'm going to make this up, Jane.
Yeah.
Just say you want to say to yourself, like, um, I will feel 10% better about about the next email I send, or I will feel like it was fine in the next email I send. And
Hmm.
then that might
Okay.
result in you feeling calmer. I'm not quite sure what the word would be for you. More at peace?
That makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's some really, it's just sometimes the stuff seems so easy, but it's practicing,
Okay.
doing a little, and there's some
Yeah.
specific like exercises I do hands-on with some of my clients around these, they call the thought ladder. It's actually,
Okay.
shorthand is called, if you've heard of this, CTFAR. It stands for context, and Cara talks about this. Context, thoughts. I'm typing this in. I don't have time to explain all this right now, but just to give you some search terms.
Okay.
There you go. All right.
Thanks.
So you're welcome. So I think we're at the end, and
We
I could
are.
stay
I'm
on
keeping
for like,
track of everyone.
yeah, I'm gonna go ahead
Becky,
and
thank
stop
you
here.
so much.
You're welcome.
This was
This
a
was really
great
fun.
session. Um,
Yeah,
and I know we have a lot of interest from folks, so I've taken
great.
down the requests in the order they were asked for with the dates and times. And even if you didn't put a date and time, you're on this list, and we have
Yes,
the
I'll
emails
be
of
reaching
folks
out to
when
you.
you registered. So we can send that out.
Great.
Oh, I get some new emails here. Okay. Um, this was a new one, Becky. I think it went well. The Ask Becky. I think you got a lot of asks, and
I did. They're great
you
ones.
you navigated this well because
Thank
they
you.
were they differed, from question to question, and I think it was great for everyone to hear everyone else's questions, right? I think that's
Yes.
part of the lure of this kind of session is we can be in a community. Um, so we're going to hopefully try to do more of these. I think it was a good
I think that would be
experiment.
great. Yeah.
Yeah, I really liked it. And we will, for everyone that was interested in a session and that put something in the chat, we will be reaching out to you directly. And again, look at Becky's next webinar will be, is it April, Becky? I think
April. Yes, it's in April. Yeah.
April. And then we will continue to feature Becky. Um, and hopefully we can get in another ask because I think this one worked really well. So thank you very much, everyone, for joining
Thank
us.
you all.
I want to put a plug in. We have a somewhat newer alum career coach and friend to Becky and I. His name is
Yeah.
Michael Bolanino, and he'll be presenting next month. And I
Don't
love
miss it.
Michael.
Yeah.
I love Michael, and he's presenting on resilience. So it's like the best topic. Well, all the topics are good, right? They resonate, and today's did as well. But check out the Alumni and Friends calendar and look for Michael Bolanino's session and sign up for that. I think you'll have a similar, sort of find similar value. And then Becky will be back for many more sessions too. So don't
Yeah.
forget to find her.
We
I
should do
think you've
this one
already
again.
got your fan. We
Yeah.
should do this one again. I think you'll
Yeah.
find that there are already people signed up for your April
Good.
session. So we'll take a look at that. But thanks again, everyone. I'm
Thank
going to
you
close the
all.
meeting now, and
Okay.
we really
And
look
just
forward
for
to
you,
seeing you next
Nicole,
time.
I have a
Oh,
coaching
yeah.
session in 5 minutes, but I'll
Okay,
text
we
you.
can
We'll check in.
follow up
Okay.
later.
That sounds
Okay,
good.
great.
Thank you all.
Thanks, everyone. Okay, take care. Bye-bye.